And today we're going to talk a little bit about how to find opportunities in adversity. So the Conflux is the nation's first co-learning space for manufacturers and distributors. We are going to be seeing more change in the next 5 years than we've seen in the last 50. And the manufacturing and distribution space is going to be dramatically impacted by this tidal wave of changes. And so the Conflux, what we are doing is how do we curate content connections? How do we get people together that are your manufacturing and distribution peers and experts in the marketplace? How do we get those folks together to share their experiences, to share their expertise in order to learn and grow with each other? And this is a perfect example of that. So we've got a great panel today that my business partner in goBRANDgo, Brandon Dempsey, is going to be facilitating. And we're hopeful that this is going to be some great content that will help you navigate through these uncertain times, because there's a lot of change and there's a lot of chaos right now, and the uncertainty is abound. But one thing we can know for sure, the way business is done will never be the same. And so there's a great opportunity for all of us that are prepared to take advantage of those new ways and new challenges that are in front of us, to take advantage of those and make our businesses even better and even stronger on the other side. So Brandon, why don't you introduce the panel that we've got today?
Awesome. Thanks, Derek. Super excited to have the three of you on this panel discussion today. Matt and GV and Derek, I think then the prep we've done for the questions and what we're going to discuss about today, I'm excited to take away and learn a lot from it. So from an introduction standpoint, I'm going to let you guys kind of introduce yourself with one quick question. So GV, if we're going to start with you, give us just a quick 15-second background, and then share with us a little bit. I know you've written a lot in this area, but share with us a little bit of some of your tips and tricks about how you care for yourself in kind of a high stress environment to stay mentally sane. So that's going to be the question. Give a short little intro, and then how do you take care of yourself in a high stress state to stay mentally sane?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks and welcome everybody. Again, my name is GV Freeman, and I have spent about 20 years in software marketing product development, and probably the last 12, 13 years now doing a lot of work in self-care. I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a meditation teacher. So I kind of come at this from a number of different ways. And today I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, startup founders, primarily in the tech space, trying to bridge the gap between what they're doing in their company and also taking care of themselves at the same time. I would say, how do I do this myself, and how would I teach somebody else to do it, or what advice would I give somebody else today? I use the 80-20 rule a lot. So 80% of your time should be spent on your business, and 20% should be spent working on self-care. So for every 8-hour day, you need to find a couple of hours to be in self-care. And that the definition of self-care is really broad in this case. So I would say that. And then the other thing, the 3 words that I am reminding everybody today is patience, permission, and compassion. And we can get into that a little bit more. But I think that we all need to adopt more patience, give ourselves and our coworkers and our families and our friends way more permission to just be, and then have as much compassion as we possibly can towards ourselves and each other. Hand it back to you.
Thanks, Matt, let's jump over to you.
All right, first of all, Brandon and Derek, thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys hosting us. So I think the question was a little bit of our background and then some self-care. Am I getting that right? You're nodding your head. Okay, great. All right, so my background, I spent about 25 years in the U.S. military, a variety of different deployments and kind of all over the world. I'm looking at Brandon's map behind him there. So I've spent a lot of time around the world in different deployments where situations that sometimes were kind of unknown or it's a little bit chaotic. And so some background in that area. How am I taking care of myself? Well, one, bourbon. And so cheers to all of you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not sophisticated enough to drink bourbon. I don't even know what it means. So look, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm not doing a good job at it. I got 2 guinea pigs. My kids' school shut down, so suddenly we're the recipients of animals within the school. So I got 2 guinea pigs living in my basement. And the last thing I can do is take care of myself. So I'm looking forward to hearing what GV says about this. Sometimes I put headphones in and run for a little bit. And my 3 words, I like GV's. He had 3 words. I'm going to have 3 words. Wash your hands. No, I'm kidding. That's all I got.
Thanks, Matt. Setting the tone. I like it. Derek, how about over to you, man?
Yeah. So Derek Weber, president of goBRANDgo. So this is our 17th year in business. So we work with $25 to $250 million manufacturing and distribution companies. We also, Brandon and I are co-founders of the Conflux co-learning space. And so we're excited to once again help the manufacturing and distribution space navigate these crazy times. So, you know, interesting things right now. So what I have learned recently, I learned last year that I have food sensitivities, and a lot of things that I thought were mental, emotional, physical challenges were actually caused by food. And so I've been doing a lot of research and a lot of reading and talking with a lot of experts over the last 2 years. And what I've learned is that your chemicals create your emotions create your thoughts, and your thoughts create your actions. And it's this cycle that goes all and around and works in with each other. And any one of those four things can be hijacked by sleep, diet, exercise, and stress. And what I know is right now, sleep is low, stress is high, which leads the only two things that I know that I can control are my exercise and what I put in my mouth. And so what I'm hyper vigilant about and hyper focused on right now is making sure no matter what, I'm getting a workout in every single day. And most of the time I'm a 4, maybe 5 time a week workout person. But in the current circumstances, I'm making sure that every single day I'm getting a good sweat on and a good workout on, which is the only way to really burn those stress chemicals out. The other thing I'm really mindful about is what I eat. It's really easy to, in stressful times and working hard and working late, you know, I know we're going till 10:30 every night. It's really easy to eat something that's quick and easy and comfort food. And so I've really doubled down on, you know, the things that we all know we're supposed to do, fruits and vegetables, and not much heavy stuff, not much pasta, no you know, fatty proteins. And I have found that helps my energy level stay higher, which enables those chemicals to be moving forward, because stress and sleep are definitely a challenge right now.
Thanks, Derek. Derek, you talked about this concept of thought to action. This is something that GV and I had a long conversation about this weekend. GV, can you talk a little bit about some of the research and some of the tools you put together with that concept around thought to action?
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly the order that Derek brought it up, and I think that there's a lot of different ways to approach this. But to know that we are all one big system, I approach things from a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual perspective. But if we look really specifically at thoughts, in the teaching that I use, our thoughts, which are usually based on historical things that happen in our life, those thoughts then create feelings. Those feelings release hormones into my body. So if I have a thought that says I am under stress, if I have a thought that says I don't have enough money in the bank, that thought makes me feel something. So it makes me feel fear. In this case, fear releases hormones into our body. In this case, probably cortisol and adrenaline. And those things then make me act in a certain way, or sometimes not act in a certain way. So I can either choose action or inaction. And that moves us into that place that we all know of, kind of fight, flight, or freeze. And that inaction and action really create our world. So if I have a negative thought that causes me to feel a certain way, that releases something into my body that makes me do something, that is the chemical, or that is the chain that everything balances on. So if I want to change my action, all I really have to do is change my thought. Now, that's a whole different system, and we can use lots of things to change thought. And I don't want to take up more time than necessary, but you know, part of that, I tell a lot of founders, get yourself a coach, get yourself a therapist, start meditating. Even if you don't know how to meditate, start trying to settle your thoughts down just a little bit and sit with your thoughts and know that they're not going to kill you.
Thanks, GV. Matt, I want to build off what GV just said there, which was fight, flight, or freeze. I've always heard fight or flight. I've never heard fight, flight, or freeze. I'm curious if you saw that show up in your 25 years of experience in the military, and then curious how you see that show up with the corporations and CEOs and senior leaders that you work with now. So if you could fight, flight, or freeze. Talk a little bit about that and or expand upon that concept from a military experience and then to the private sector.
Yep, sure. So what we look at is there's, I'll throw out 4. It's fight, flight, freeze, and fold. In other words, you're just not going to do anything. I'll cave to whatever you want. And so where you see this is obviously under items of high stress. And I can't believe I'm going to tell this ridiculous story. It sounds so much tougher than it actually is, but I'm going to go here. So as an example, people will do things that we look at it and say that lacked intelligence, or what a dumb move that was under higher stress. It has something to do with IQ. And so I'm wrapping up all of these things that Derek and GV just mentioned about our thoughts and then what happens to our behaviors. We were decommissioning a whole bunch of weapons. And so all these people, I was in West Africa, and all these people are bringing up their guns and explosives and whatever. My job was to take them away from them before they got into the camp, it was like a demobilization thing. I'm not kidding you, it's not that cool. But the interesting part was this young, he was basically a teenager, and I don't know, a teenager, and in this area of the world during this time, it was the Civil War was ended in Liberia. This teenager brought up this grenade and an AK-47, and my Marine friend, I don't know why, he just started yelling at this kid. And my Marine friend's a pretty big dude, and he's yelling at him, "What do you do with that grenade? Give me that gun," snatches this, grabs this. So it's all this yelling and commotion. It's usually like that. It's, because I think his intention was, I want to let you know who's in charge right now. I'm in charge, I'm the leader, I'm right here, I'm doing this. And the kid just panics, right? And he just pulls the pin out of the grenade. And the grenade works where there's a clip on it that you use. It gets a little technical, but basically pulls him, and he's still holding on to what's called like the spoon. So he's still holding on to this thing. And I remember as soon as it happened, it makes this little bit of sound, and all of us just stopped, like, well, now the whole environment is a little bit different. And the reason we're nervous is it isn't like the movies where you drop their grenade and then this 3 to 5 seconds, this thing explodes. Some of the armament there was so old that it expired, and so you don't actually know the timing of these weapons. And so the point I'm trying to make is this young man was overloaded with all of this force, all of this transmit, does something that just seemingly makes 0 sense whatsoever. Everyone else, the immediate reaction of everyone around him was to calm their voice down, to slow down the speaking, to tell him it's going to be okay. How are you doing? Walked over, grabbed it, taped it all back. It's all perfectly safe. But you were asking, like, how do you see these reactions? Basically an amygdala hijack. I'm literally overflowing your mind with emotion over logic. How do I see it show up in the corporate sector? Well, I see it when we aren't taking into account someone else's perspective. So I know this is a little bit of a rough transition, but the one thing that I don't see leaders doing in corporate America right now is the first thing I'm going to do is just act with compassion to you and ask you, how are you doing? I'm going to start there. I don't care if you're a customer, you're a client, you're a team member. I'm going to start there with caring for you as the person. If not, and I just start transmitting at you, or I just start telling you what you're supposed to do, with all of this stress, all of the uncertainty, maybe I'm eating too much comfort food, maybe I'm not getting my work out. In other words, I'm not in my right mind. When I do that, I start to push people into 4 areas. I'm either going to fight back and tell you why it isn't a good idea. I'm going to fold and just do whatever you want. I'm going to freeze and not do anything at all, or I'm going to flee. I'm just going to run away from it. And I think the cure out of that is to default more into asking opinion. I'm sorry for talking so much there. When I got started on the grenade thing, I was trying to work myself out. I'm not sounding really cool, but it didn't work.
No, that story is pretty cool, Matt. You had goosebumps going on while you were telling that story. So that was fantastic. And I like how you wove it in with taking that sense to pause. Derek, I'm going to come to you because I think that it was pretty cool how that was natural, how that just built a fight, flight, freeze, or fold. And curious how you see this showing up with leaders in this environment right now, Derek. Because I know you're talking to entrepreneurs through EO worldwide now. How are you seeing this show up?
Yeah, so everyone's fight, flight, freeze, and fold looks different, right? And a lot of times organizationally, and I'll take it to an organizational level, from a leadership perspective, right now the acting with speed and intention is vitally important because the companies that are slow in reacting and just kind of seeing how things flesh out are the ones that really have no options left. And so then they must fight back, or they must freeze, or like they've given all all ownership of their decisions away. And so right now, what is vitally important is to stay out in front of it and act with speed, act with intentionality, which is going to create a sense of optionality that you've got more choices and more options to make. Staying out in front of it is vitally important right now. And so as leaders, we have to start with us, and we have to be, like Matt talked about, showing compassion to our employees, to our partners, to people in the community, and asking lots of questions. I spend most of my day right now just talking with people. What are you seeing in the marketplace? What are you hearing? Where is it going? And taking all of that information and putting it into, as Brandon and I talk about, my rumination machine, and processing through it and working through it, and then saying, okay, here's what I'm hearing from multiple people. It's just like I'm sure Matt dealt with, like in the military. You get a lot of differing information coming from a lot of different people. And so if as a leader, we're not in a space where we can take the time to really sit with our thoughts and think strategically, even though things are going crazy around us, we're going to actually create more problems than opportunities. And there are so many opportunities in this situation right now because everything is up for grabs. Everything is being disrupted right now. And so it's the leaders that can be thoughtful and be in tension and act with speed that are going to be able to take best advantage of the opportunities in front of them.
Thanks, Derek. GV, I'm going to come to you. With some of the founders that you work with, we're in this startup mode, and there comes a point in time where they need to pivot. I think this is somewhat similar, where some companies are trying to figure out, how do we pivot right now? How do we pivot and not change our entire offering, but how do we pivot and still show value to current clients? Can you share with us some stories or examples of how you see product founders pivoting in their business to respond to the needs of the marketplace? Because I think that's what a lot of people are going through now.
Yeah, so I think that when we look at it in the startup world, we're looking for product market fit. That's kind of the general broad term. And right now, the market that you may have been operating in previously might not have as much demand. One of the things about product market fit is it requires demand in the market. If demand decreases, you have essentially lost product market fit. So you need to potentially change your product, you need to change your market and seek out more demand. And the market always wins. So when you start looking for other opportunities with your products, I mean, I think that we're seeing it today in St. Louis. We're seeing Anheuser-Busch, we're seeing small little distilleries that are now creating hand sanitizer. Now, not to say that not enough people are drinking alcohol, but actually I did just hear yesterday that on-premise beer sales for Anheuser-Busch last month dropped 60%, but off-premise liquor stores dramatically increased. So it's merely trying to figure out and look at all of this big possibility space and say, who needs my product today? Or, what can I do with my tools and services that I didn't need to do before, but now I need to do today? Look at the market, follow the market, and see if you can adapt your skills and products and manufacturing processes to that. That's how I would tell you to move forward. One last thing, this is going to be pretty specific, I think, to IT or maybe tech companies, but there's a fantastic book called Traction. And in that book, they give you 17 or 19 different ways to go out and test the market. You can do it quickly. You can do it relatively inexpensively. You can begin starting to test a lot of different options out there and see what the market is giving you feedback on, and reduce the feedback loop as quickly as you can.
And to clarify, GV, that book Traction it's a yellow covered one, not the Traction Business Entrepreneurial Operating System. So a lot of people could look at the wrong book there, but I totally agree. That's a great book recommendation in times like this.
Derek, I'll tell you, it is by Gabriel Weinberg.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent. Derek, we're going to stick with you on this product market fit concept with some of the design workshops that you've done with different clients. I know I've seen times where clients come in thinking, okay, we're going to go to market this way. They go through a design workshop and suddenly it's, oh, we need to go to market with this way. Could you share with us some of the process that you take people through to help them understand? Because I think that process is going to be really needed in today's environment to figure out how we're going to pivot and adapt to still show value to the marketplace.
It's a lot what Shane talked about is we oftentimes as business owners have a solution that go out and look for a problem. In times like this, you have to be hyper vigilant and hyper focused on what problem am I solving for my clients? Who are people that the people that are paying us revenue? What problems are they facing, and how can we help them? And so we need to be really, really focused on what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve, and be less focused on the vehicle by which we're going to achieve it. So we have to be really nimble. We have to be really able to kind of pivot on a dime right now, and try to really understand and empathize with our customers about what they're going through and what do they need from us. So a perfect example, we talked about in the crisis communication webinar for goBRANDgo. All of a sudden, marketing for new business acquisition is not the top priority for our clients right now. And so we shifted gears immediately to creating all of our clients' crisis communication plans. And within 2 days, before anyone even asked for it, we had crisis communication plans fully baked, fully rolled out, fully with their logo and branding, ready for them to roll out to their employees, to roll out to their clients, to roll out to their partners. And this type of proactivity right now is what we all as business leaders must be focused on, is what can I proactively lead with value for our customers? How can I help them accomplish their goals right now? Because their goals have shifted. Right now, what maybe before were, how do we grow our top line? How do we grow our bottom line? How do we expand our market? How do we launch new product lines? Right now, it's survival. So how can you help your clients survive through this time period and then take advantage of what's coming on the other side?
Thanks, Derek. Matt, we're coming over to you. This concept of people are under stress and they've got to pivot. I know through your work with Chapman and Co., this whole your strong concept of focusing on people. Can you expand upon a little bit, if you would, about GV and Derek's concept of how you have to care for people and how you help people uncover those opportunities when they are in the thick of it and trying to fight for survival? Certainly from a military standpoint, it's physical and life survival. From a business standpoint, it's business survival.
Yeah, no, thanks. I like the commentary here. I think we're bringing it to another, just chatting with some other folks that work at Four Seasons and Delta, and a few folks in this concept of adaptive leadership. And so in times where we don't know what the outcomes are, I don't have a predictability index to understand what happens, this adaptive leadership idea comes in. It's looked at that there are two problems. One is more of a technical problem versus an adaptive problem. Technical problems are what was happening in January and February before the US has hit a lot with the coronavirus. Typically, those kind of problems are solved by people with expertise, authority. I know a lot about this subject matter. I know the play patterns. I can solve that. Adaptive problems are usually solved by the person experiencing the problem. So bringing this way back to what Derek mentioned, he's like, I'm spending majority of my time asking questions. If you want to serve your client, and if you do want to pivot, and I want to know how and what actions I should take, then a really great way to get the input is by the person closest to the problem, and you get that by asking those type of questions. I will tell you, from our business, we're as consultancy, my job is to put a whole bunch of people in the same room. So you might imagine how that causes our business to be slightly impacted by this a little bit. So when someone was like, how's business? I'm like, well, great, except I have no clients anymore. So other than that, it's really fantastic. I think that I have never worked so hard and made no money, and actually really enjoyed it. So I think the one thing, in just complete transparency, since I have no idea who the attendees are, so all of a sudden I'm being brave here. Man, we're just playing the relationship game. I don't know about the economics. I'm not sure how the economics in the really, really short term are going to work, but I'm going to find out what's facing people. We're going to pivot to that. And whether it's online or whether we're giving people free executive coaching services, I don't care. But we're going to show up in a way that we can serve. So I think in unprecedented times calls for extraordinary responses. And I do just want to really quick call out to one of goBRANDgo's clients, who I don't think they're on this, but they're doing an incredible job. And that's Holt Electric Supplies. And so as an example, they're still an essential business. So they're serving the construction industry. So they have people that are still going out there delivering electrical components and supplies to people building the buildings and such. And so he realized, well, I have people that are still out there, and he knows a lot of small businesses are hurting. So as an example, yesterday he ordered 50 or 52 dozen donuts from, I think it's Crazy Donuts or World's Fair Donuts, the Botanical Gardens here in St. Louis. I help that small business, and I'm delivering donuts to the people that are on the job site. And so he's taking advantage of, I'm just going to play a relationship game and show up as a really, really great human being right here. Even the dentists love him. Come on.
So Matt, I want to build off something you said there, and that's that concept of play pattern. So what do you see as the play pattern to keep people focused on their most important priorities when they've got a whole bunch of crazy stuff going on?
Yeah, and so the play pattern in stress is I act with compassion, I communicate clearly, which means a lot of listening, and I decide intentionally. So I'm going to take out the third block of the decide intentionally. One thing to keep people focused is I want people to know, like, it's enough to be stressed about this and it's enough to communicate about it. But what I really want to give people is I want to give them a target they're going after. Here's where your energy should be. And I also want to give you a very good priority scale so that you can make decisions. So one area that I really like using, it's called the Eisenhower decision matrix. And it just basically puts, and I could send this later in a graphic, it just basically puts urgent and important. And so those things that are both urgent and important, those are tasks that I do now. Those things that are very urgent but not important, those are things I delegate. Not important, not urgent, those are things I don't do. And very important but not urgent, those are things I plan for. And so I'm using 2x2s or some type of structured decision-making to give to my people, and then giving them a very, very clear priority scale on how they can prioritize their own work. Because the part about stress that's really challenging is if I don't have an outlet for it, if I don't have energy to drive it to somewhere, now I'm just idle hands and I'm sitting at home. So I'm going to work really hard to create an environment where people can do some of this work and prioritize it. And that's one of the tools that we use.
I want to add one thing, kind of build on top of that. And we've talked about it. It's come up a couple of times, this concept of control. And for so many of us, we are grasping for control today, not only personally, but professionally. And so much of this is out of our control. Now, what we're doing when all of this stuff gets out of control, that's when I go and buy cases and cases of toilet paper and Purell and stock up on food. Like, all that is just a control mechanism. It's scarcity. And I am just trying to make myself feel a little bit better. But because so much is out of our control, I love this decision-making matrix and priorities. But what I encourage people to do in times like this is, rather than setting goals, so we talk about like SMART goals, really time-based and achievable goals. What I swap out in cases like this are to set themes rather than goals. So I'm always moving towards my theme. I'm moving down the path in priority order. I remove some of the time commitment, because so much of this stuff is out of our control, that if I set a goal and I don't make that goal because of something that's out of my control, then I'm going to beat myself up for it. Now I go back to that same thought, feeling, hormone pattern. And if I'm beating myself up, I'm just creating even more stress.
So then, GV, during that time, how do you see people and or how have you personally found opportunity when there's times of heavy change?
Well, it's challenging today more than ever, I think, but I use this kind of concept a lot. Like, are you working in your business or are you working on your business? I think Brandon and you and I talked about that a while back. And there are opportunities, even in these crazy times of stress, to take a step back. I think it's required for us to take a step back and make sure that we're working on the business. It's so easy to get embroiled in all of the day-to-day stuff. But if you can set up a little bit of time to take a step back and say, are we doing the right things? Are we moving in the right direction? That's taking the time, I think, is required. I can't give any super perfect examples or practices to tell people to do that, other than to potentially hire Matt for like an innovation workship.
There you go.
Or goBRANDgo.
Hey, Brandon.
And GV, GV, I think it's Warren. I love Warren Buffett's quotes, but I think the one that's most appropriate right now in that situation is, it's only when the tide goes out, when you see who's been swimming naked. Right now, there are a lot of people that tide has gone out, and there's a lot of shorts missing right now.
Yeah.
And and I think right now, all of our shortcomings, all of our inadequacies, all of our shortcuts that we've made in our business are coming to light right now. And so I think that's a huge opportunity if we look at it as such, because this is the time where we can look at and say, how can we make the business better? How can we make our leadership better? How can we make our management better? You know, and I think, you know, from a leadership perspective, it's always important to communicate with your team about your vision and where we're going and direction. You know, a mentor of both me and Brandon, a gentleman named Warren Rustan, talks about, you know, the three most important things of leadership are clarity of vision, certainty of intent, and the power of values. And these are things that are important, good, bad, or in different times. Right now, they are crucial. You know, we're communicating with our team every morning at 8:30 and just reinforcing kind of what Matt talked about, like giving them something to look at, something to look forward to, and really driving the message of, hey, we're really fortunate because our organization is very adaptable, very flexible, and can change with these times. Our clients, our manufacturing clients, our distribution clients, their infrastructure makes it a lot more difficult for them to be quite as nimble. We need to be focused on them, concerned about them. How can we help them? How can we lead with proactive value? And that's, once again, time and time again, just really driving home what is the vision that we're trying to accomplish. No longer is it what is our vision, what is our 3-year, our 5-year, our BHAG, our 3HAG. Right now it's what are we trying to accomplish during this time period. That is really the length of vision that as leaders we need to be focused on. And it's a huge opportunity to practice great leadership skills, because it's only during times of adversity and crisis that leadership skills get tested to the max. It's easy to lead when things are going up and to the right. When things are, it's at times the term like a roller coaster is, I think, overused. But right now it's literally from hour to hour, day to day. It really can change the direction of how the emotions are feeling, how those chemicals are flowing. And so it's vitally important, once again, that we stay really have that intent and be certain with it, and re-communicate that vision, and have the real focus be on something outside of ourselves. How can we help others? You know, we're fortunate. Anybody that has the ability to be on this webinar right now, we're fine. We're doing okay. There's a lot of people out there that aren't. And so we need to be making sure that we're keeping our focus, and then therefore our team's focused, helping on people who are in worse situations than we are right now.
Matt, over to you. I know you've got something for us.
Yeah, coming off mute here. Sorry, I would just wanted to key in just very quickly, just as a tool. So I like that Julie was bringing up the what can we control, what can we not? Do we set themes in a lot of the environments where we didn't know what was happening from day to day, or it's a new deployment, it's a new area. I'm trying to make sense of this. One thing that we would use, and I always thought this was Covey, and I don't think it is. It's a mix mash of a lot of people's thoughts. But if I look at 3 areas, when I'm looking at the environment, I look and I put them into 3 buckets. One is, what do I absolutely 100% control? Usually that's probably my attitude, how I'm showing up, what my communications are, those type of things. But it's absolutely 100% in my control. What is absolutely 100% out of my control? 100% of my control is probably the global economy. The amount of hand sanitizer availability, or the number of toilet paper rolls my local Schnucks has. Right? That's 100% out of my control. And then I have a huge bucket that I try and orient people working toward, and that is, what can I influence? I may not be able to influence what people say about my company right now on social media, or I may not control that, but I can certainly influence it. I may not control what my people are feeling, but I can influence that through my communications. And so if I'm trying to put things, and this is out of control, in control, whenever I see people that are under a lot of stress and times, and they're putting in a binary camp of it's either A or B, I'm always trying to get into that hybrid model of, okay, but what do we influence? Because that's where activity can lie, and I'll learn a lot more there. That's all I wanted to say.
I want to add one thing to what Derek mentioned, just as a really quick thing, tying to some of the entrepreneurial startup mentality. He said, at goBRANDgo, you guys are walking in every morning, 8:30, and you're meeting with the team. And I don't know if that is a common practice across more industries, but in the tech world, we call it the daily stand-up. It comes from Agile. It comes from specifically Scrum, where I'm getting all of my team members in a room for 15 minutes in the morning, and each team member just focuses on 3 things. What did I do yesterday? What am I doing today? And are there any blockers from me achieving that? And if you get your management team or even just your smaller departmental teams in a room and say every morning, what am I doing today? What did I do yesterday? And are there any blockers? And can anybody else in this room help me achieve that? Doing that daily, if not multiple times a day, could be a really great opportunity to be a little bit more nimble.
Thanks, GV. Derek, I'm going to hit you with now a little bit tougher question of how are you personally, or how do you see people capitalize on some of the hidden opportunities during times of great stress? So really, what does great stress bring out, and what are those hidden opportunities that people should be looking for?
You know, every prognostication that I'm seeing is that this is going to be a V-shaped recovery, that it's going to be deep and dark, and it's going to get worse than what it is right now. But then on the other side of this, it's going to come out, and it's going to come out fast. And, there's a few things that I'm hearing that's going to lead to that. One, the government has done a great job at starting to implement some programs that are getting a lot of funding dollars pushed down into small businesses, whether it's the SBA disaster loan, and there's a lot of other local agencies that are getting businesses capitalized to make sure that we aren't, getting cash strung and having to lay off a bunch of people. Two, there's a lot of consumers right now that are cooped up in their homes, that have canceled their vacations, that have canceled their trips, that aren't going out to eat as often, that aren't going to movies as often. And I think we all know those dollars aren't going into retirement accounts right now. That all those dollars are being pent up, and as soon as the gates open up, it's going to come a flooding out. And so, that pent up demand is sitting there. Where the opportunity I see is the biggest opportunity, especially in the manufacturing space, is all of that pent up demand is coming, as well as all the conversations I'm hearing is there's a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 1000s that are working right now on bringing their entire supply chain back in-house and back in to the U.S. domestically. So a lot of the work and the jobs and the parts that have been sent out overseas, they just can't do it anymore. And, if you think about it, through Entrepreneurs Organization, Brandon and I have a lot of friends across the world, and we've been communicating with some of our friends in China, and they said a lot of these factories have been absolutely decimated. They were already weakened by the trade tariffs and the trade wars that were going on. Then come January, they had multi-week shutdown where, everyone in China was shut down. And then now followed on, a lot of these factories were dependent upon American manufacturing. So a lot of these companies have been without revenue for 3-4 months at this point, and we're already in a weakened state. Those factories may not come back online. And when they come back online, that's just not going to be probably the quality that that our American corporations are looking for. So a lot of those manufacturings are going to be, as the term I'm hearing a lot is, insourced back to the U.S. And there's an HBR study that was done a few years ago that they looked at over the last 25 years in the 80s, the early 2000s, and then the 2008 recessions. Who were the companies that came out of those recessions the fastest and the farthest? And it was an interesting study because what it showed is the companies that went in and just started cost cutting and slashing were by far the worst performers on the other side of the recession. The ones that just doubled down, as they say in blackjack, like they just pushed on and pushed their chips into the middle of the table, they actually were the second worst performers. The ones that performed the best, and it was a 2 times better performance, were the ones that were very strategic about focusing on how can we cut costs by increasing operational efficiency, and how can we invest strategically in things that are going to strengthen our market position. That could be in acquiring assets, that could be in acquiring territories, that could be in acquiring businesses, it could be pushing more dollars into sales and marketing. But those were the companies that were 2x times more likely to come out and be an industry leader on the other side of the recession. And so right now, there's a huge opportunity to be very thoughtful and very strategic about where you're cutting and where you're adding that value to. Because on the other side of this recovery, and it's going to come fast and it's going to come furious, there's going to be a window of time that's open for a very small amount of time where there's going to be trillions of dollars that are going to be reallocated into different places. And then once again, those buying decisions are going to come smashing down shut. And that's how it's going to be going forward. I was talking with one person who's an expert in finance, and they said over the last 25 years, 95% of the upmarket happens on 4% of trading days. And the same thing is going to happen when this flood of dollars comes back into American manufacturing. There's the equivalent of 4% of trading days are going to determine what the next 25 years look like. And so companies who are prepared to take advantage of that, who are working and focusing on operational efficiency and cutting costs and reducing time that it takes to achieve their outcome, and the ones that are investing in the future outcomes and the future assets of the organization, whether that's in inventory, sales, and marketing, or whatever it may be, are going to be the ones that take advantage of that and have huge growth on the other side of this.
Well, I think that builds upon GV's point about working on your business or in your business, and that now could be a good time working on the business. To also build upon the point, Derek, of transitioning and what are those dollars freeing up. Matt, you and I have a mutual friend in Jeff Winters, leader of Sapper Consulting, dear friend of both of ours. And Jeff and I had a great conversation last week. And he goes, look, trade show dollars, they're gone. So now there's a whole big pile of money that was going to go out to trade shows and was going to go to more of these events that is up for dollars, and they've still got sales numbers they're trying to hit. We are a great solution to try and help meet that need, and there's more budget there for this now. So I thought that was a great way of how Jeff reframed and said, hey, because this isn't happening, there's opportunity here, and here's how we can help with that opportunity and not take advantage of it, but help and service it. Matt, I want to come over to you and share. I know you've got a cool story about how Chapman & Co. has done some of its pivot. I'll let you take it from here.
Yes, maybe I'll just spend like 60 seconds on this really quickly. One is I am Barry Wehmiller. In the economic downturn, one of our groups was faced with some really arduous economic headwinds. And so the decision constantly comes up, and I think we're kind of skirting around this, but getting into what Derek was mentioning about where are those organizations that actually were very, very quickly to respond. And so it comes into do we or do we not do layoffs, right? And so I think for Barry Wehmiller, I just had a guest appearance, so just a cameo, be fine. It's not the guinea pig. As for Barry Wehmiller, one of the items was, obviously cutting expenses and then looking at value generation. And then the last one was using the concept of shared sacrifice. And so for this organization, manufacturing organization, we went into and did, everyone could do.
That's awesome.
Like
you brought your drink.
Delivery on demand. Well, I don't want to support child unemployment here. So everyone got the ability to do shared sacrifice. So it was take a week furlough or a month furlough, and you could take it anytime you wanted. And I'm not going to get into all the details of it, but basically it created a lot of empathy within the organization. Everyone is going to sacrifice something. In this case, it was a month of unpaid leave, so that no one person has to sacrifice so much. So the play pattern of this with the layoffs, and I think actually Jeff Winters at Sapper Consulting is a good example of this. The play pattern is one, right? I reduce all my expenses that I can. I renegotiate leases and rents. I look at all the things that discretionary I just don't need to spend money on. Number two is I look, and this is one I think some organizations miss, and that is I focus on value generation. So a good example of that is Anheuser-Busch or a whole bunch of New York microbreweries converting over and now making hand sanitizer. Where's the value generation that I can create right now? I know everything seems like our entire business model has changed. What do I influence? What's the value creation? The last step, and the reason I'm harping on this is stats will tell you longer term, and I know it seems like it's the best short-term solution, but longer term, man, those layoffs have a really long tail of negative impact. What are people saying about your company when they're leaving? How are your talent, your skills, your knowledge leaving out there? The people that are staying, how do they trust the organization? And I'm not saying organizations shouldn't do it. For some organizations, it may be the choice they have to make. But am I reducing every expense? Am I looking at value generation? And third one is, can I do some type of shared sacrifice? Some organizations, operationally, it doesn't make sense that they can do like a furlough system. And so what they're doing is, it's an across-the-board pay cut. If you're doing that, we would recommend the senior team takes more of a percentage cut, and you establish a threshold bottom floor. So that if you have some lower income people and you're doing a pay cut, that I'm not actually harming them below a certain threshold. So those are ways you can look at cut expenses. I look at value creation, and then I look at a shared sacrifice so that I survive not just as a business, but I survive as a team. This isn't about saving a company. This is about saving people.
Thank you, Matt. We had one, I'm going to come back to you, Matt, with another question about VUCA. So just know that we're going next. There was someone who asked a question about sharing some of the resources. As we're going, we've got another 15 minutes of this webinar. If there are certain tactics, tools, ideas that you and your business are utilizing right now, if you put those in the chat, it'll fill up in the chat. What we'll do is I can grab, copy and paste those out, throw them in a deck, and then email it out to everybody who is on this webinar, as well as attach it as a screenshot. I'll remove all the names and scrub it so it's just ideas. But if you want to throw ideas of what you're doing from a business standpoint to find opportunities during this adversity, throw it in the chat and we'll capture it and bring it out. Matt, I want to come to you about VUCA, because that's something you and I have discussed before, of this VUCA world. Could you explain for our audience the concept of what VUCA is, and really what are some of the tools in decision making and when you understand that environment? Because it's not a new term. It's a term that's been around for a long time.
Yeah, and I think it's a term that the military turns into an acronym to make us sound a little cooler than we are. If you were to just distill it down, it'd be like change. It stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And so I just used a whole bunch of synonyms.
Say it one more time, slower.
Okay, I'm sorry. It stands for, I like to say it quickly in case I get the words wrong, then no one can check me on this, right? It's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's as if somebody took change, put it into a thesaurus, and then put 4 words, put it into an acronym. And it always sounds tough when you can use a word that starts with V. In times of uncertainty and change, right? The play pattern is the number one thing I'm doing. And I know it sounds like you're a military guy and you're telling me this is the first step, and that is act with compassion. And I know, right, the military's role is to break things, to bend someone to your doing. But if I'm leading a team, and this is where it differs, and I'm trying to bring this into just any organization, any group of people, the number one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my values. Not only mine personally, but the organization. Pull it off your wall, grab it from the, who are we, from your website, if you can't remember it. Now is the time to bring that out and say, if we are this organization, if this is our purpose, what we stand for, what our values are, I want to tell you where we're making these decisions. I want to tell you how we're all going to act. The second part is I'm going to seek to understand. So this gets right into what Derek was mentioning about asking questions. Number 3 is I am going to really work on catching people doing things right, especially in more change, because the more uncertainty I have and more people are trying to learn, I want them to know I see them and I appreciate them. And so I'm going to double down on any type of recognition or celebration I can. I know it sounds really strange, but if I'm trying to pivot to different areas, I'm probably making more mistakes. If all I do is point out how this could be better and how we made a mistake, I'm not recognizing the hard work and effort that people are putting into. Probably the other part that's really important in a VUCA environment is the clear communication. From anyone that's a leader, it might sound like you are a broken record. That's actually the drumbeat your people need to hear. And it starts with, I want to know how you're doing. I always start with, because it's probably right in my values about caring for people. The drumbeat is, how are you doing? What's your perspective? What are you seeing? And then the last part I think we've covered is, I'm going to decide very, very intentionally. The tool that we haven't talked about on the decision of intentional and communication is the concept of ask why, tell why. And so for groups that are trying to learn really, really quickly in a new kind of changing environment, as a leader, I'm going to give the context. My role is to tell you the context why. Your role is to ask, what is that context? It gives the freedoms of both parties that learn much faster in an environment that's constantly changing.
Thank you.
And I think that, as I say, like talking about, the tide going out from a leadership perspective, I think, what Matt just talked about is a perfect example of the tide going out from a management perspective, because let's be honest, like we are constantly in a VUCA environment at this point. The rate of change and the speed, even when not in a really difficult time right now, the speed of business right now is always changing. And so, this is once again a really great opportunity to see where our weak points are from a management perspective. How are we managing our employees? How is our management team, and how are our middle managers? Because all the things that Matt just talked about are not just important right now during a period of crisis. That's what makes great companies run, is great communication, great accountability, great, about setting expectations and really following up with those things. And how do you run great meetings? I mean, once again, these are things that we should all be doing all the time, but during times of up and to the right, it's really easy to get lazy, to get kind of complacent in the way that we're running our organization. This is a time to do a little soul check and say, hey, am I leading well? Am I managing well? Are my managers managing well? Because this is what high-performing organizations do all the time. And this is why the high-performing organizations are going to come out of this performing even higher, even better, even faster.
So GV, I want to go over to you, because a lot of the different founders that you work with, they're in this spot where they're stressed. They're trying to figure out how to pivot. They're trying to figure out how to grow their business. They're trying to figure out how to take care of themselves. What are some of the sayings that you have, or some of the advice? I like that, some of the things that Matt and Derek have given us. What are some of those mantras, if you will, that you give to some of those different startups and different founders that have helped them see that opportunity and see, okay, this is where I need to be looking?
Well, I'm not gonna go as much down the opportunity path. I'm gonna give three kind of thought patterns, and I mentioned one at the very, very beginning. So if we think about this, kind of the three levels of business that I work with a lot of people on, is the strategic level, the very high level, the tactical level, which is kind of in the middle, and then the operational level, which is day-to-day stuff. So at the strategic level of your being, we kind of talked about patience, permission, and compassion. Have patience with yourself or others. Give yourself and others permission, and that might be permission to eat donuts and drink Diet Coke. That's what I'm doing right now. That might be permission to work out 5 times a day, 7 or 5 or 7 times a week, and then have compassion for yourself. Like, take time and tell yourself. And I loved what Matt said. In fact, I wrote it down. Catch people doing the right things. I think doubling down on recognition is a great opportunity. So that's at the strategic level, highest level. Next down, if we look at kind of the tactical level, this is what I'm going to try and do on a daily basis. And I use the 5 S's. So the first one is soothe, and that's soothe is meditation, yoga, get out for a walk, take a nice bath, listen to music, hobbies, whatever that is. So soothe. Sun, get out in the sun, get some vitamin D. Sweat, raise your body temperature. As Derek mentioned, that we need to get our body temperature up to a point where we can burn off some of the cortisol and the adrenaline. Sleep, make sure that you're sleeping, trying to sleep 7 to 8 hours a night. It's probably pretty challenging for people today. If you work out, and if you eat well, there's a better chance that you will have to sleep well. And then the last one is serve. So help other living beings. Do what you can to help your friends, your family, your loved ones. So those 5 S's, soothe, sun, sweat, sleep, and serve, that's kind of the tactical level. And then the last one I would give people is one more acronym, and that is, pardon my language, but that's the oh shit moments that we are going to have during the day. Like, I don't know what's going on. Some stimulus was just introduced into my day, and I don't know what to do with that. And the acronym that I use there is STOP, S-T-O-P. So first of all, you have to stop what you're doing. If you cannot stop what you're doing, you will likely make a suboptimal decision. So stop what you're doing. T, take a few deep breaths. O, observe your body. And this is really important. Smile. Like, literally go to your office, go to the bathroom, close the stall door, take a few deep breaths, observe what's going on in your body, put a smile on your face, and then P, proceed with kindness and compassion towards yourself and others. So that is stuff that you can work towards thematically on a weekly basis, stuff that you can do on a daily basis. And then finally, stop is really like intense. This is happening right now. I just need to get out of a crazy thought pattern. So that's the best way that I can tell people to take care of themselves across the board.
You crushed that answer, JV. Well done, man. Matt, let's go to you for final thoughts, some of the things you're taking out of this, and then we're going to wrap up here in the next 5 minutes. So Matt, some of the final thoughts, some of the other, any tips, tricks, advice you want to give to people, and or things you've taken away.
Okay, and this would be from both my military background and my consulting background, and I really like that that JV just turned this into a PG rated webinar, so I can say the following things. My youngest son, Henry, who's 9. So I'm going to admit that I'm a terrible parent here when you hear this. He's 9, and he said, "Hey, can I go play basketball with my friend down the street?" You know, and I'm like, a typical parent thing, like, no, coronavirus, et cetera, some fake empathy that I tried to put out there or something, you know, and this is why, kid. And there's a quick pause, and he kind of just looks at me and he looks at the ground and he goes, "That coronavirus is a piece of shit." And then he just walked away. So I thought, this is the reason I'm bringing it up, and I like that JV said this, is, man, it's important to have a sense of humor, especially in times of stress. And I know that might be like, almost at times sounds tone deaf. I mean it from a standpoint of within your own team. And so for us, one thing that we are doing from our team is every morning we have a very quick huddle on Zoom. Now, obviously, it gets into a lot of operational things. It gets into what are we doing in the business. All of that's there, but there's also the human-to-human fun component of this. And so we'll have a playlist that we're playing, and people are guessing who chose that music. Those type of things to connect us as humans through this team. I will tell you, in the worst of circumstances that I have been in the world, the thing that really got us through as a team wasn't just all of the things you would think about operationally. It was because we had a sense of humor and bonded together as humans. There's a reason we think things are funny and irony, and I'm not saying coronavirus is, but the implications that all of us are hunkered down in some offices and we're all on this Zoom chat right now. The irony of these things, I think, can be called out, and your sense of humor in these times can really bring a team together. And thanks for hosting. To Brandon and Derek, thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it.
And tomorrow, Matt, you've got a webinar on why not to do layoffs, right? Is that correct?
Yep, at 11 a.m. I can send you the link and you can push it out to your attendees. We'll do that tomorrow at 11 a.m. and then again on Tuesday next week at 11 a.m. on just looking at shared sacrifice, learning from other organizations what they've done, and not just to not do it, but here are the steps before you consider that. Here are some steps you can take. Thanks.
Awesome. Derek, final thoughts and comments to build a little bit off some of the tactics and tools that GV gave us.
Yeah, and I think this is, anytime that there's a lot of change going on, there's a lot of opportunity. And it's up to us as leaders to take advantage of those moments. And, right now, operationally, kind of what GV talked about, is like, this is the time that you can kind of reevaluate, because I know there's a lot of things that at goBRANDgo that we were starting to slowly seed into making a few things more efficient. And there was some bloat that had maybe creeped into some of our deliverables and execution and the way that we operate. That all got wiped out and eviscerated like that. And so right now, your teams are going to be more likely to take on change projects and change initiatives than they ever were before, because during times of uncertainty, they know that the way we've always done it is not going to be the way that we're going to do it going forward. So this is a great window of opportunity for us as business leaders to put those change initiatives in that we know that we've been thinking about and in the back of our heads, and they've been on our to-do list. This is the time to really test and experiment with those operational efficiency initiatives that we've been working on, because 1, you need to do it. 2, because this is the time where your team is going to be most receptive to it. And 3rd, once again, the studies show if you focus on operational efficiency and then strategically invest in the right places, you're going to come out on the other side of this and blow your competition out of the water.
So I took a ton out of this discussion. I learned things, Derek, that I haven't heard you say before. GV and Matt, same thing. Like, I got a lot out of this. So thank you so much for taking the time to be on today. This was recorded. It will get posted to YouTube. We will email out a link with some of the resources, as well as the video YouTube link, out to everyone who registered for this webinar. And just appreciate you all taking the time to hop on today.